What's up, co-reporters, and welcome back to my channel. It's time for another recap of what went down on Teen Mom Next Chapter. Quick question for you guys. Why do they keep dropping 2 episodes at a time? I feel like sitting through 1 episode at a time is hard enough to, squeeze in, but 2, it's not that interesting, okay? But alas. So, Leah talks to her friends about talks to her sister, about her father having an addiction problem and whatnot. And so I found it really interesting that in the midst of all of this discussion, Leah never once accepted responsibility for having already exposed her daughters to addiction. She says to her sister that she doesn't want their father in her life right now because she doesn't want to expose her children to what she was exposed to growing up. Meanwhile, they already were exposed to addiction, right? Because Leah, she admits earlier in the episode as well, that she was an addict for many years. And we saw that play out on the show, her nodding out, holding babies while she's driving, the kids not having food to eat, just some Lunchables or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. This is what I mean when I say that Leah never accepts responsibility for anything. She'll always blame everything on everyone around her. She could have easily said, and I've already unfortunately exposed my kids to it, but no more, right? Anyway, Catelyn's mom is watching the kids as she and Tyler move into their new home, which I did find rather interesting because I could have sworn that last season on the show, we finished off with Caitlyn and Tyler showing us that Caitlyn's mom, April, had relapsed with her issues. So how do we go from April relapsing and Caitlyn being very triggered by it and no longer wanting to speak to her mom watching the kids so that she could move into the new house? I do need a little bit of a backstory on that. Or is the mom still in her alcohol phase and they are so desperate to have someone watch their kids while they move out or something? I don't know. Either way, we do get to see a montage of Caitlyn and Tyler quite literally growing up together. You see a teenage version of them. He's helping her move out of the trailer that her mom had gotten them all evicted from and stuff. It was so crazy. Honestly, it's wild how long these two have been together since so damn young. So, one thing that was quite interesting as they talked about moving to the new house and it being very big and everything is how they don't have the same kind of worries that their parents had about providing for their kids. They never have to worry about that. But I don't know, Caitlyn pimping Tyler out on OnlyFans, the $1 million tax debt and stuff paints a different story, right? So listen, although they're making good money, it seems to be that they are not managing it very well. So I do hope that once they get themselves back on track, they're able to have someone in their corner helping them to budget and whatnot. So Macy's got another health storyline. And this time she is trying to set us up for her surgery to remove her breast implants. She got them done a long time ago after having her son Bentley. She's since had more children. And, I think they typically say that you should be removing or exchanging or whatever with your implants every 10 years. So it's about that time for Macy to go ahead and have them removed. And, just the setup for it was so dramatic. She'd just be lying there, Taylor, are my eyes red? Taylor, my eyes are itchy. Then the next one will be like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted. And then she goes on to read this list on issues related to breast implant illness and whatnot. I was like, okay, you guys, this is just so long, drawn out and dramatic. It reminded me of how she was pretending that she didn't know she was pregnant when she was pregnant with Maverick, right? She'd be drinking like crazy with Taylor, doing the keg stands and stuff at restaurants and whatnot. That was that season where they had to drink every scene you saw them in. And then all of a sudden she'd be like, oh, I'm not feeling too well. Do you think I might be pregnant? And then she asked Bentley. Meanwhile, her belly's out to here. And then what did Bentley have to say to her? Oh, I thought you were just fat. The whole thing was just a set up mess. Guys, guess who's back in town? Briana Dejesus' baby daddy, Lewis. That is one person I certainly do not miss. You know who I miss in life right now? My arch nemesis, Kristen. Janelle's producer was just absolutely so fun to be irritated by. That's someone I would love to see back on the show, but they don't seem to want to bring her back. So Lewis comes back around and he has just the same old deadbeat loser excuses for why he hasn't been there for his daughter. First of all, Brianna asked him where he's been. He's like, home. Oh, what so here around in the same city as your daughter and you're still choosing not to see her, like that is so lame. And then she asked him why he hasn't been around for his daughter. I've been overwhelmed. You don't think Brianna's overwhelmed with two kids? You don't think your own daughter's overwhelmed sometimes in her life, and that she could like use her dad to be there to help her through that? Like, he is so awful and so selfish. I don't understand how the heck my girl got knocked up by this man. And then not only that, but decided to bang him. Remember when she caught like some kind of STD from him because like he was already showing up to be like a deadbeat, showing himself as a deadbeat. And then like, I don't know, one of these times he showed back up in her life and she was like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna let him hit it. And then it turns out that he had like fleas or something like that. And then she caught them from sleeping with him. Like, it's just all too damn much. Like, I hate seeing him. So as usual, the deadbeat formula, right? You show up with a gift for the child. You expect a hug. Luckily, Stella did not give him a hug, thank God. And you hope to do the same thing next year, like it's a mess. And so it was just a mess. So who else is here, by the way? Ashley. So Ashley Jones, we have some sad news from her, which is that her brother unfortunately died. He was quite young. I believe he was only like 30 years old or something like that when he passed away. And they don't give any details as to what happened, but I do remember reading, and I went to look it up as well, that he was just found no longer alive outside of a train station. And then they said that there was no foul play or anything like that suspected. So I don't know, maybe it was a health condition, maybe it was something else, maybe it was something that he planned, I don't know, but it's very, very sad. And just like watching everybody sort of deal with it and everything was really difficult, that's for sure. One thing that really kind of broke my heart was Bar talking about how he's just so familiar with death and how it just doesn't really like have the same effect on him as it does on other people. And I'm like, that's so unfortunate that like he's been in that position. He said that he saw his first person like pass away before his eyes when he was only 6 years old. I was like, what kind of life is this child living? Like, oh my God, that is so unfair, like horrible, horrible, horrible. I feel really, really, really bad for him. Now, Leah Messer was off driving. And I do notice that she has a cell phone in her hand. She puts the cell phone in her lap. And then a couple seconds later, I'm not saying all this happened within the span of a couple seconds. Like, this is how it was edited. You see her, she knows she's going to be in a car crash. She's bracing herself for it. She looks at something cross her, and then it's the crash. And she got so tense. I was like, oh my God, no, don't get so tense. Don't get, you're not supposed to be really tense when you're crashing. It's like a natural reaction, unfortunately, but you're supposed to try to keep your body as loose as possible for minimal impact on you. And, she has a really weird reaction after it happened. I guess like she was just so like dazed from it. Like she just like, she has the crash, she freaks. And then she's like, she just fixes her hair. And I was like, that was a really interesting reaction. But again, she must have been so out of it from the impact or just the shock of what just happened, So she comes out of the car. She's like, is she okay? Everybody's okay. And, I'm just glad that it wasn't anything worse than anything too bad, right? Like her car was totaled, that's for sure. But it seemed like she and the woman in the other car as well, like they were in good condition, and that's all that matters. Insurance can handle the rest. Now, Macy, she decides to go and do a video call with a woman who suffered from breast implant illness and then decided to explant her implants. And she talks about how she has like all the symptoms on the list and whatnot. And like, she feels like she's got the same issues and that the medical community doesn't take this seriously. And she's like, oh, great, another illness that the medical community doesn't take seriously. Because guess what? Macy also suffers from PCOS. And that is something that's still kind of like, is it still relatively new or something? It's not getting as much funding as other illnesses and diseases and whatnot. So she seems a little bit discouraged by that, which I can totally understand. I think a lot of people still want to debate whether or not it's a real thing and stuff. It's kind of like similar to Lyme disease. People still want to debate that. Like, it's very, very hard to get this stuff sort of like, pinned down, diagnosed, and just like, get help for it as well. So Caitlyn and Tyler, they do move into that new home of theirs, and they start talking about how like this is such a big home, like it's much bigger than anything they could have ever imagined themselves in. They talk about how they grew up in trailers and they just like, they thought they were going to be like the trailer park kids forever, which I'm kind of like, listen guys, you've been living in big homes for a while now. Like the the octagon house that you're about to move out of is a big house. Like it's a very big house. It's got acres of land. You've got a neglected horse and everything. And I think you got a pony for the neglected horse. Like you got a lot of space and you got a really big, beautiful house. And then I think you own 2 houses at the same time. The other house was another nice, big, detached house that you let your sister live in for free. And then you bought your sister like boob implants, breast implants. Like you guys have had money for a really long time. So I was kind of like, okay, like with the whole, like, like I get it. Like it stays with you forever if you have like, this like, if you grew up poor or whatever, but like they were acting like they just suddenly came into money and they've had money for a while now. Okay. Like again, that house they're moving out of, the Octagon house, is a beautiful house and it's got acres and acres of land. Okay. So that was my reaction to it, but maybe you guys had a different reaction. So I do have a question speaking of reactions. So you know how Leah got into that car wreck and stuff? She's driving around with the twins to go somewhere, and then the twins mentioned something about the car wreck, and then Leah says, I can't believe Addie told you guys about the car wreck. And I'm like, wait a minute. Well, why would Addie know about the car wreck and not the twins? She's younger than the twins. So if anything, it would be more appropriate, in my opinion, for the twins to be aware of this than for Addie to be aware of this, if you wanted to keep it away from anybody, right? That was really interesting to me. I do feel like Leah is closer to Addie than she is to the twins. So that doesn't surprise me on one side, but on the other hand, I'm kind of like, I don't know, like that comment was really interesting to me. Like, did she tell Addie about the situation, or did Addie just like overhear a conversation that she was having with somebody else about the situation? Just very, very much interesting. So she calls her dad because her sister told her that her dad had a stroke. The dad said, no, I didn't have a stroke. I just had a pinched nerve. By the way, I was also in a car wreck, and it turned out that I didn't have a license. I have a suspended license. So Leah tells her dad about how she was in the car wreck as well, but she's got a license and insurance. So tough luck. And then like after she talks to her friend about how she doesn't really want to have her dad in her life that much. The dad didn't ask how her kids were doing. He's not really making an effort to like kind of like heal himself of his addiction issues. So like her boundaries are very strong when it comes to him, which I can totally respect. Next, we get a scene of Bar talking to Ashley's mom about the passing of her son. And I gotta say, this man is dead behind the eyes. I didn't really notice it as much until this episode, but like Ashley's mom is like asking him, like, I know that you've dealt with a lot of like death in your life, Bar. How do you cope with all of that? And Bar says, honestly, I don't, with like a really like deadpan face like that. I was like, like, I think he needs somewhere to release all of this like trauma or like, whatever it is that's going on in like his heart, his soul, and his mind. Because like I said, he's been through a lot. This is something that makes me sad when people who were not in great situations choose to have children, because guess what? Like these children suffer from so much trauma, whether it's like poverty trauma, whether it's the trauma of being raised in certain environments that are just not good for kids. Like, then you grew up like Bar, where people around you are dying left, right, and center because of the things that they have to do to survive and make money because their parents don't have it. You know what I mean? Or, it's a lot. It makes me really, 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 really sad, to be honest with you. I just, whenever I see people like this, I just see like the little kid in them who didn't have a shot, who didn't have a chance. And, it's just sad. I think that people should be born into better circumstances, but unfortunately that's life, right? That's the way it's always been. And that's the way it's always going to be. Which is just unfortunate. Ashley's mom did sound like a robot as well when she was talking to Bar, which is really, to be expected. She just lost her son, and like you kind of just got to keep pushing your way through it, not yet ready to realize what happened. Like she said, she's just moving, preparing for the funeral, just getting everything together. And then later when the storm calms and it's just her and her thoughts, it's going to hit her what happened. And God, I can't even imagine. It's really, really sad when like something happens and you're just like, okay, you think you've already like, processed it, but then you realize later that you didn't. And then it just hits you all of a sudden. Oh, it's so painful. That poor women. One thing I want to say though, now I'm hoping not to be disrespectful to the memory of Ashley's brother, but something that stood out to me about his funeral was how everybody was wearing red. It was like, it gave me kind of a bad feeling, to be honest with you guys. I just felt like, don't tell me he was in the gang. Don't tell me he was in the gang, and it's not to blame him or anything, because again, when I was talking about Bar and how he witnessed so many things so soon and so sad things, like death a lot, I'm like, well, maybe it's a situation with Ashley's brother as well. Like, but I thought she came from like a family that was like pretty like decently well-to-do and whatnot, but sometimes people who are kind of disadvantaged and they grow up in these neighborhoods with other people like that, they got to fight to survive. And unfortunately, sometimes that means committing to a gang, even if you don't want to, sometimes you just have to, because that's what this neighborhood is about, and it's just really, really sad. So I hope that's not the case, but that is something that stuck out to me. At first it was just like Ashley's core family there, and they were wearing red and white. I'm like, this ain't Canada Day. This is a funeral. And then later you see everybody else and they're all like in red, like very explicitly in red, like not subtly. And I'm like, oh God, don't let this be what I think it is. But, man, that was interesting. Maybe it was his favorite color, but I got a bad feeling about it. Now, Briana Dejesus, this woman, I don't know, like she, like to me is like kind of like a Khloe Kardashian type, like a glutton for punishment, like a humiliation kink type of person. Like Devon wants to go to therapy in Texas, okay? They live in Florida. I don't know why Devon's therapist is in Texas because that's where he did his rehab or whatever. I don't know why they couldn't just do like a Skype therapy call or something like that. Like the fact that they have to go together to Texas is just ridiculous, like they're both single parents, not together and whatnot. So Brianna tells her mom, Roxanne, about this plan to go with Devon, and her mom is just not having it. By the way, I'm really loving this like new era of Roxanne, like no longer coddling Brianna. Like last week's episode, she called Brianna a consistent train wreck. And this week, she's like, you are not going to no damn Texas for therapy with this guy. You guys, this is not a practical therapy plan. Like with this situation, you can only go like twice a year. You need therapy on a weekly basis. Get serious and find somebody local. Like this is ridiculous. And I felt like she was 1000% correct about that. And she said, this is more of a vacation, like be effing for real. And, one thing I just want to point out is that Brianna, like, remember like all those years that she would spend claiming to be like the single mom who like raises these kids with no help and this and that. Meanwhile, she's about to be the only member of the cast who's leaving for her second vacation or trip of the season. And we're only 3 episodes in. Who makes it so that Brianna, the single mom with no help, is able to go out on these trips on a whim with, like as if she's child free? Oh yeah. Her co-parents, her mom and her sister, they really need a lot of acknowledgement from this girl because they do a lot. Like she never even consulted with them. Is it okay with you? Blah, blah, blah. Because they both work. Her mom and her sister work, but she was ready to leave those kids with them as if they didn't, and that's just a lot. It really is. I don't know. I found her really strange. Brianna is someone who never really shows any growth, to be honest with you. And I find that to be rather disappointing. I think she's capable of growth. Although, like I do mention, I think that there's something going on up there. I don't think that the elevator goes up to the top floor. So the level of growth that Brianna can hit is different than the level of growth that, perhaps you or I can hit in life, which is like nothing wrong with it. But it's just that I don't really see as much coming from her. I don't. I think that she should. I get that she appreciates that Devon is organizing the therapy and that he's got someone he's comfortable with, but she could be a lot more practical about it, especially with kids being involved. And she could ask for them to like do a Skype session or this or that, or, like, can we test out different therapists to see if you could be comfortable with someone else? Because this is not going to work for the long term. You know how expensive it is to be paying for flights and hotels and everything to go to Texas every time. Like, it's just not sustainable, but I digress. Anyway, guys, that's a recap of what went down on Teen Mom Next Chapter, Season 2, Episode 3. As always, I'm more excited to hear what you have to say, so please make sure to leave all your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, and as usual, we'll chat. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.